Uncanny Japan is author me, Teresa Matsura, exploring all that is weird from Japan. Strange superstitions and old wives' tales, cultural oddities and interesting language quirks. These are little treasures I dig up while doing research for my writing, and I want to share them with you here on Uncanny Japan. I hope you like the show. Hey everyone, this is Terry with Uncanny Japan. And since it's the end of October, near Halloween, today I want to talk to you about something a little scary. Let me tell you about the life, the death, and the ghost of Okiku. A little background first. There are a whole slew of different versions of Okiku's tale. The scholar Atsushi Ito claims that there are at least 48 variations all up and down Japan. It's almost like if you find a castle and a well, you'll find this legend. What I love, though, is that I think it says something about the bones of a story when you can go in and you can change so many elements and still come out with a nice, creepy tale. More evidence of a solid legend is one that stands up to the test of time. The story of the unfortunate servant girl Okiku is believed to date all the way back to the early 1500s, and it's still around. It was a folktale that became a puppet play, then rewritten for the kabuki stage before being retold again and again and again. Books, short stories, plays, movies, TV shows, comics, art. The famous ukiyo-e artist Hokusai depicted her in his Hyaku Monogatari, 100 Tales. Even the Japanese storytelling performance rakugo has a humorous version of her tale. What's also mind-blowing is that after hearing about her, you might think she sounds familiar. Have you seen the movie Ring? Yes, Sadako, who climbs out of that creepy well, is also considered a kind of incarnation of Okiku. But the book and the movie Ring wasn't the first time she appeared in the English language. Her tale was written about way back in 1871, when the British diplomat A.B. Mitford, who was serving as the translator and interpreter for the Meiji Emperor in Edo, now Tokyo, included it in his collection of tales from old Japan. He cared so greatly for Japan, its culture and its people, and when after returning to Britain saw that the Japanese were considered more or less barbarians, he took it upon himself to write and show their moral hearts through the legends and the fairy tales. He called her story Okiku and the 9 Plates. In Japanese, it's often called Bancho Sarayashiki, the dish mansion of Bancho. Although you'll sometimes hear that there's different variations like Bancho Sarayashiki, or Okiku no Osara, to name a few. So let me tell you about the folktale version of her story. It's the simplest and easiest to follow. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful servant girl named Okiku, Chrysanthemum. She began working for a samurai named Aoyama Tessan. Tessan fell in love with Okiku, but over and over she refused his advances. Over the days and weeks and months, Tessan grew more and more infatuated, but also more and more frustrated and angry. One day, Okiku was caring for a set of 10 priceless heirloom plates when she noticed that something was wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There were only 9 plates. There was no 10th plate. Okiku, knowing how valuable these plates were and how much her master adored them, let out a blood-curdling scream and counted the plates again and again, quickly growing more and more panicked as she did. The young servant girl looked everywhere for the plate that was nowhere to be found. What she didn't know was that it had been hidden by Tessan himself. Finally, devastated, Okiku took responsibility for the missing plate and went to her samurai master, admitting she had somehow lost the 10th plate. Tessan was furious and boomed that the punishment for such a crime was death. The girl apologized again and cowered at his feet, terrified. Tessan grew quiet and watched his pitiful servant whimper. He then offered her a solution. If she were to become his lover, he would forgive this misdeed. Okiku looked up, tears streaming down her face. She refused. Hearing that, Tessan flew into another rage, even more terrifying than before, and dragged Okiku out of the castle and to the well, where he threw her in and she plummeted to her death. He thought the matter was finished. But the following night, Tessan was awoken from a deep slumber to the sound of Okiku counting plates. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There was a pause and then a blood-curdling scream that sent ice through Tessan's blood. This happened again the next night, and the night after that, and the night after that. In some versions, this continues until Tessan goes mad. In another version, an exorcist is called, and he shouts out 10 before she can scream. This tricks the spirit of Okiku into thinking that the plate has been found, and she ceases her nightly visits. But there are so many other variations. Keeping in mind that these tales have sprouted up all over Japan throughout the years, sometimes the name and the position of the samurai change, but it is always Okiku, there is always a well, and she always comes back as an unsettled spirit to count the plates. There are versions where she accidentally breaks a plate, where she becomes his lover and then breaks a plate to test his love for her. There's one where she incurs the wrath of Tessan's mistress, who is the one who breaks the plate and then blames it on Okiku. There's even a version where her master discovers a needle on his dish of food and thinks that she's trying to kill him, so he hauls her out to the well and disposes of her. In a few of the tales, she actually commits suicide, once again by throwing herself into the well. Like I said, there are Okiku shrines and wells in different parts all over Japan, but the main one most people believe is hers is located in Hyogo Prefecture. The well where she died is at Himeji Castle, and her shrine a short walk from the Himeji station. It is at the well that some say her ghost still arises after midnight to count those plates. One interesting and confusing thing about the story being set at Himeji Castle, though, is that the legend is older than the castle itself. But truly the most curious place to declare having Okiku's well is the Canadian Embassy in Tokyo. They do have a bit of an argument because the land where the Canadian Embassy sits was formerly owned by the Aoyama family. I'll end with an interesting bit of trivia. Back in 1795, there was an infestation of Chinese windmill butterfly larvae throughout Japan. Because the larvae were found in old wells, and also that if you used your imagination, they almost looked like a female who had her hands tied behind her back, the rumor spread that Okiku's unsettled ghost had come back in the form of these pests. So because these larvae were believed to be a reincarnation of Okiku, Himeji City in Hyogo Prefecture decided to designate the Chinese windmill butterfly as their city butterfly. It used to be that you could go to the Okiku shrine and purchase one of these insects as a souvenir. So there you have it, Okiku and her sad tale. For this month's bedtime story over on Patreon, I'm going to retell a different version of her story, complete with creepy background music. But for now, thank you all for listening. I will talk to you again very soon. Bye-bye. Psst. Hey, do you like scary stories? Or maybe you don't do full-on horror, but enjoy a nice dark tale, something creepy involving Japanese folklore and superstition? Well, if that's the case, you can sneak on over to Amazon or wherever you like to buy books and look for my 2 short story collections, A Robe of Feathers and The Carp-Faced Boy. All you need to do is search for Teresa Matsura. Let me spell that for you. TheresaMatsura. Another place you can find me doing things is on Patreon. There, once a month, for my $5 and up patrons, I translate, retell, and record obscure Japanese folk tales. Some are dark, some are humorous, some are just weird. And lastly, another super sweet thing you can do is to write a review on iTunes. By doing this, you help like-minded people find Uncanny Japan. It's a little thing, but it means a lot, and it's a great big help. Thank you. I'm Teresa Matsura, and I'll talk to you soon.